Chapter 39. Madame Blavatsky. All is one number, issued from no number. Madame Blavatsky. A few days, weeks, months, or years have passed since my meeting with Lialeb and Volak. What's the difference between a day, a week, a month, or a year in eternity? Time doesn't exist in this realm. I was now in the library of the scanning place investigating the life of Madame Blavatsky. I want to find out why she was considered to be a candidate of the darkness. In her writings, she continually talks about the light, enlightenment, suffering, and humanity. From a simplistic point of view, I would have thought that she belonged to the light. But now I fully understand that light and darkness are the same energy. What is so different that the followers of the light pursue? It's precisely the same. The end justifies the means for the light and the darkness as well. And in the end, it's only up to us to continue with this challenge. A penny for your thoughts, Lialeb said, interrupting my reflections. Hello, Lialeb. I was waiting for you, I responded. I can see that. Are you ready? Lialeb asked. Yes, I answered. Did you have enough time to research Madame Blavatsky? Lialeb inquired. Yes, I read practically all of her works and writings, and I must tell you that I'm impressed, I admitted. She was a remarkable woman, remarkable for her times, and she's still remarkable now. She was a shock for the light and his followers. She searched for truth, and she would not stay silent, as she was determined. She was a light in the shadows. I interrupted. A light? Yes, a light. Why are you so surprised by that? Lialeb asked me. Well, I thought that those in the darkness don't like the light, I answered candidly. Lialeb laughed. No, Myra, you have to understand the meaning of light and darkness properly. The darkness is the light in its best form, as it is the light without any lies. The darkness is pure light. However, since the light took that non-variant name to make it theirs, we took the nemesis of light as a challenge, that is, the darkness. Darkness brings light to the souls of human beings consumed by lies of the light. We want them to see the truth by themselves, without facts that have been contaminated by the light. The more you fear, the more the light shall pale, as Madame Blavatsky used to say, Lialeb noted. Fear? I questioned. Yes, fear, my dear Myra. People of the light fear. They fear even their shadows. Madame Blavatsky wanted them to get rid of their fears and come to us, Lialeb said. Okay, I think I understand, Myra confided. Are you ready to go? Lialeb asked. I am ready, I answered. Once again I went into the time-traveling room, and the screen appeared before me, and suddenly I, Myra, was flying over Russia in the early 19th century. It was the summer of 1831, the date August 12th, 1831. I quickly added the numbers. 8, 1, 2, 1, 8, 3, 1 equals 24, equals 2 plus 4, 6, and discovered a number 6. I would have imagined Madame Blavatsky being a number 3, but possibly this number 6 was a strange combination of number 33. 3 plus 3 equals 6. The place was named Yekaronoslav, but Helena Blavatsky did not stay there too long. Her family moved often. First they moved to Romankovo, then to Odessa, Tula, Kursk, and St. Petersburg, and finally in 1839 they returned to Odessa. It was here that her mother, Elena Andreevna, found an English governess for her children who taught them English. I can see Helena's interest concentrating on the people from the lower classes, and I can see her playing with the children of the domestic peoples, instead of playing with her class equals. When she was 10 years old, she began to study German. She was a natural for that language. Her father complimented her and told her that she was a worthy heiress of her glorious German ancestors. In July 1842, when Helena was 11 years old, her mother died. It's always surprising to see how this number 11 works in so many lives. Her mother's last thoughts were for Helena, her oldest daughter. Helena's mother proclaimed moments before her death that she was worried about the destiny of Helena. I was deep in my thoughts when I heard a voice. The self emancipates from number 7. I wondered what this meant when suddenly it came to my mind. The 7 original divinities, or the 7 gods of darkness that gave origin to all our souls. I moved forward in time, and I saw Helena in 1880 when she was writing The Secret Doctrine. I could hear her reading from her manuscript. These 7 gods, each of whom created a man or group of men, were the gods imprisoned and incorporated, all of them called the Demiurge, or the Creator. Their 2 creations are the Elevite and the Jehovite. They went to each one of them on this allotted land, 7 of them, each on his lot. The lords of the flame remained behind. They would not go, they would not create. The 7 hosts, the will-born lords propelled by the spirit of life-giving, separate men from themselves, each of his own. 7 times, 7 shadows of future men were born, each of his color and kind, each inferior to his father. The fathers called to their help, their fire, which is the fire that burns on earth. The spirit of the earth called to his assistance. In the end, the solar fire is a shadow consisting of no meaning. The breath needed a form, and the fathers gave it. The breath needed a body, and the earth molded it. The breath needed the spirit of life, and the creators breathed into it its form. The breath needed a mind to embrace the universe, but not one of the creators was willing to give their account, because the breath would consume it, and this is why they remained mindless. Eventually, this new creation became old, vanished, and disappeared in the new stream, in the stream of life. The outer part of the first creation transformed into the inner part of the second creation. The old wing became the new shadow, and the shadow of the wing, she concluded. Why does all this seem so familiar to me? I wondered. The 7 creators are exactly the 7 gods of darkness that Natas explained to me. They are the leaders of the rebellion against the light. Madame Blavatsky wanted people to know that there is not only one original God, but 7 original ones within the darkness, and each one of them has evolved with his creation. She tries to explain that all men have spiritually and physically the same origin, and that humanity is essentially of the same essence. She stated, "The divine spark in men being one and identical in its essence with the universal spirit, our spiritual self is practically omniscient, but it cannot manifest its knowledge owing to the impediments of matter. The more frequently we remove these impediments, the simpler the inner self will fully manifest itself on this plane. This concept is our explanation of a higher order, in which is exhibited by undeniable intelligence and knowledge." I needed more time to digest what I just learned. I then continued searching through Madame Blavatsky's life, and it's evident that she was well-traveled and quite well-read. I followed her into Tibet and India, where she spent a few years. I can see her visiting various masters in Tibet and learning from them. Later on, I can see her in Egypt, meeting teachers with extraordinary psychic powers. They were masters of the ancient wisdom. Madame Blavatsky claimed that these people were not divine, but they were more evolved than the rest of the mortals. The final goal of these masters was to unite humanity in a great brotherhood. As a result of her experience, in 1875, Madame Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society in New York City. A few years later, she went back to India and established the Theosophical headquarters there. I watched her speak to her followers. We humans have lost real spiritual insight because we are too devoted to things of sense and have for too long been slave to the dead letter of dogma and ritualism. It is here that I can see what Lila was explaining to me. The light is none other than that of dogma and ritualism. If you want to break free, one cannot follow doctrines. Critics wildly condemned Madame Blavatsky for being correct. People accused her of writing horrific hokum of inventions and insane esoterica, while other critics called her one of the most accomplished, ingenious, and exciting impostors in history. Why was she considered an impostor? Philosophy can be right or wrong, but how can one be mistaken for thinking? Is it because individuals think differently than others? Does that make one an impostor? One god or 7 gods? What's the difference? One could say that we're simply puppets in the hands of the gods. Are we free to think our thoughts, or are our thoughts imposed by our learning experiences? I was not sure yet about the card corresponding to Madame Blavatsky, and I kept seeing her life and writings, so I delved into what Madame Blavatsky defined as the root races. She considered that the root races were stages in human evolution, and that these races existed mainly now in lost continents. According to Madame Blavatsky, the first root race was ethereal, as they were composed of ethereal matter, and they reproduced by dividing, like amoeba. According to her, the earth was still cooling at that time. The second root race was Hyperborean, which is golden-yellow color. Hyperborea emerged among northern Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, and northern Asia, as they reproduced by budding. I didn't know what budding meant, but the answer came to me. Budding is a form of asexual reproduction in which a new organism develops from an outgrowth, or bud, due to cell division at one particular site. The new body remains attached as it grows, separating from the parent organism only when it's mature, leaving behind scar tissue. That's another bit of stimulating information for me to know, I thought. The third root race was the Lemurians. Lemuria's original location was in what is now the Indian Ocean, including Australia and extending into the South Pacific Ocean. Lemuria gradually sunk, and erupting volcanoes destroyed the civilization. The first 3 subraces of Lemurians reproduced by laying eggs, but the 4th subrace began to reproduce like humans. As Lemuria slowly submerged due to volcanic eruptions, the Lemurians went into a colonization period and established themselves in Africa, southern India, and the East Indies. The 4th race was the Atlantean. They originally appeared in Africa from the 4th subrace of the Lemurians, and they eventually migrated to the Americas and Asia. They gave birth to 7 subraces. The Golden Age of Atlantis took place about 1 million years ago. Later on, people began to become selfish and materialistic. According to Blavatsky, the downfall of Atlantis began when some of the Atlanteans began to practice black magic. I stopped for a moment to question black magic and what it entailed. It was then that I realized Madame Blavatsky was referring to the first war between the light and the darkness. She was able to describe a war that's still going on to this day. She claims that Atlantis disappeared from earthquakes about 9,500 years ago, and I know that atomic explosions powered those earthquakes in the last battle between the light and the darkness. After the disappearance of Atlantis, the birth of a new race took place. The 5th root race is the Aryan race. Madame Blavatsky believed that the first Aryan race emerged from the subraces that survived the cataclysms that provoked the end of Atlantis. According to her, the Aryans first appeared in India and colonized the actual known world. We are all part of the 5th root race. Blavatsky claims that tens of thousands of years into the future, a new continent will arise in the Pacific Ocean that will be the future home of the sixth root race. Have you attuned yourself to the suffering of humanity, O candidate for light? I heard these words, and I saw Madame Blavatsky teaching her students at the Theosophical Society in New York. I stopped at the classroom to listen to her. The 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, in their totality, represent 31415. This number, when not enlarged by permutation or expansion, is always 31415. The double 7, achieved through any manner of counting the two sets of figures, when added separately, one number after another, whether crossways from the right or left, they will always yield 14. She continued, mathematically, they represent the well-known calculation, namely that the ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle is 3.1415, or the value of pi. This ratio is known as the symbol of pi, being used always in mathematical formula to express it. These calculations represent the various cycles and ages of the firstborn, Blavatsky said as she ended her reading. The number 7 appearing twice, is that a reference to the 7 divinities? Was it 7 versus 7 due to the division of the original divinities in half? Or was the separation based on light and darkness? I pondered on this, and then continued listening to Madame Blavatsky. Yes, names and words are either benevolent or unkind. They are in a certain sense either venomous or health-giving. That is to say, the letters which comprise them and the numbers correlative to these letters. Madame Blavatsky understood the light and the darkness and the meaning of the numbers in this constant fight correctly. Suddenly I traveled back in time, and I was in 1862 when Madame Blavatsky was at a play. She was watching a performance of Faustus, and she was extremely excited. I saw her returning to her apartment and drawing, and she was drawing a portrait of Margarita and Mephistopheles from Faustus. In this play, the man sells his soul to the devil for power, experience, pleasure, and knowledge. Mephistopheles tells Dr. Faustus that hell has no circumferences and is more a state of mind than a physical location. Using Mephistopheles as a messenger, Dr. Faustus strikes a deal with Lucifer for 24 years of joy, pleasure, and knowledge on earth. But after the 24 years are over, Dr. Faustus's soul will go to hell. Dr. Faustus then falls in love with Margarita, and she becomes pregnant by him. Since they're not married, and to avoid a scandal about her pregnancy, Margarita kills her child. Margarita is condemned for the baby's murder and goes to jail. Dr. Faustus wants to blame Mephistopheles for all the evil in his life, but Mephistopheles shows Dr. Faustus it is his fault. It is not the devil's. Margarita accepts her responsibility, but Dr. Faustus does not. In the end, Margarita goes to heaven, but Dr. Faustus needs to pay his debt to the devil, so his soul goes to eternal damnation. Why did the darkness want me to see this? I will have to ask Lila the meaning of the story when I return. However, for now I have to choose a card for Madame Blavatsky. I don't doubt that the card is number 2, representing the High Priestess. This card represents the great High Priestess, who stands as an advocate between man and God. Who can serve as the symbol better than Madame Blavatsky? The High Priestess sits at the gate before the great mystery. She lies between the darkness and the light, represented by the pillars of the Temple of Solomon. This card suggests that she is the mediator of the passage into the depth of reality. In her lap lays a half-revealed and half-concealed secret book, representing the exoteric and the exoteric teachings of higher knowledge. I was sure she was the High Priestess, because who in her time had a higher understanding than Madame Blavatsky? The moon under her left foot shows her dominion over pure intuition. The palm indicates the fertility of her mind, and the cube on which she sits represents the earth. She is sitting on the earth, but she is sitting on the other side as well. That was the life of Madame Blavatsky, a life between two worlds, between the two layers of existence. The high priestess is sitting at the entrance to the temple of Isis, between two columns, the idea of a sacred place, a divine recipient. The two columns represent the positive and the negative. At her feet is a crescent moon opening to the secret doctrines represented by a woman full of duality, sitting between two columns representing good and evil, or light and darkness. She shows that light or darkness, good or evil, are part of the same energy, and this is why she wears a tiara, or a high crown with the shape of a cylinder narrowed at the top, representing that intelligence illuminated by wisdom and science combined with wisdom, together with a strong will, can bring triumph into our lives. A person who possesses a strong will can find pure light and should obey this light. However, what is this light? The light of the darkness, and Madame Blavatsky showed us this dark light. It is the duality of good and evil, and everything working correctly, which is why this card is number 2. This card represents the second step towards initiation. It is once again the duality of creation, as Bogomil taught us. I realized that my journey was ending, and slowly I returned to the time-traveling room. Iwe and Lialeb were waiting for me, and Iwe smiled at me. "We heard all your thoughts, Myra," Iwe said. "Yes, I know," I answered. "Can you tell us officially which card Madame Blavatsky is?" Iwe asked. "Madame Blavatsky is card number 2. Then if you heard all my thoughts, I don't think I need to repeat them," I explained. "You're right. You don't need to repeat your thoughts to us. But you didn't mention what the commandment for the darkness is that Madame Blavatsky brings to us." The commandment is, all men have the same spiritual and physical origin. All men have the same spiritual and physical origin. I know that, and I love it, Iwe said. I believe you have brought us the true essence of Madame Blavatsky, and at the same time you have brought us the true essence of the darkness, Lialeb concluded.
Tienes razón, no necesitas repetirlos, pero no mencionaste cuál es el mandamiento que Madame Blavatsky nos trae para la oscuridad. El mandamiento es, todos los hombres poseen el mismo origen físico y espiritual. Todos los hombres poseen el mismo origen físico y espiritual. Lo sé, y me encanta, dijo Iwe. Considero que nos has traído la verdadera esencia de Madame Blavatsky y al mismo tiempo nos has traído la verdadera esencia de la oscuridad, concluyó Lialeb.